Things about Canada that the rest of the world finds weird. G'day guys, how's it going? My name is AussieTash. Sorry about the temporary leave of absence, guys. I had some family things to deal with. You know how it goes. It's October, it's a brand new month, so let's go. And yes, look, I got my hair cut. It's a little bit too short, but it'll grow back, so it's all good. Okay, really looking forward to getting into this video. I've done a few videos with this guy before. He's really interesting, so let's go. Things about Canada that the rest of the world finds weird.
Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching Top 10's Net, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 things about Canada that the rest of the world finds weird. Oh, Canada. It's the second biggest country by landmass, and it's a diverse land with mountains, plains, and the most freshwater lakes in the world. This year it marks the 150th birthday of the Canadian nation. Canadians are proud of their culture, which includes 2 official languages, as well as their heritage. And the one thing that they want the whole world to understand is that no, they are not Americans.
They are definitely not Americans. Absolutely
Number 10.
not.
Why do Canadians say "eh" so often? Many countries around the world use the interjection "eh" as a replacement for pardon or huh, or a question like right. In Canada, though, the word is much more versatile. An assistant professor at St. Francis Xavier School in Nova Scotia actually found there are 10 ways that Canadians use the interjection. Now, obviously, I'm British, not Canadian, so I'm going to invite our resident Canadian who actually wrote this article he's done a little audio recording at his home and sent it to me because I would screw these all up. So we've got a genuine Canadian doing this. Over to you, Robert, and I'll be back in just a second.
Number 1, statement of opinion. The Leafs are probably going to miss the playoffs again, eh? Number 2, statement of fact. There's a Harvey's on the corner, eh? Number 3, commands. Make my fries a poutine, eh?
Yeah.
Number 4, exclamations. Roll up the rim is back at Tim's, eh? Number 5, questions. Do you think that the Jays will win today, eh? Number 6, to mean pardon. Eh? What did you say? Number 7, in fixed expressions. I know, eh? Number 8, insults. You're a real hoser, eh? Number 9, accusations. You took the last Timbit, eh?
All
Number
right.
10, telling a story, the narrative, eh? So Gordy's been drinking Pilsner and pounding CC for a few hours, eh? And he goes and gets the keys to the Zamboni.
So thank you, Robert, for jumping in and doing that, because that is something that I would truly screw up.
Okay, you guys definitely use "a" like we use "mate." 100%. We use "mate" as questions, as insults, as comments. Some examples would be like, I'm sorry, mate. Is the Macca's up the road, mate? Can I bum a durry, mate? Like, all those sort of things. You smell, mate. Like, absolutely. You use the word "a" like we use the word "mate." 100%.
Number 9. What's the deal with the Tragically Hip? Canada has given the world a wide range of musical artists like Celine Dion, Justin Bieber, Nickelback, Drake, The Weeknd, The Arcade Fire, and Bryan Adams, to name just a few. While Canadians aren't exactly proud of all of those acts, one band that is embraced by a lot of Canadians is the Tragically Hip, or simply known as The Hip. While they had some success outside of Canada, like appearing on the Billboard Top 100, but no higher than 129, and being on Saturday Night Live, outside of Canada, they wouldn't necessarily be considered rock stars. In Canada, though, the band, well, it was worshipped. Sadly, in 2016, the band's charismatic frontman, Gord Downie, announced that he had terminal brain cancer. On August the 20th, 2016, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, aired the band's last show, commercial-free, live from the band's hometown in Kingston, Ontario. In total, over 11 million Canadians tuned in. That's a third of all Canadians. The only recent events that were more popular were the last 2 gold medal hockey games in the Olympics when Canada was playing, and won, which Canadians do like to point out. So what's the deal with this band? Why do so many Canadians love the Hip? One reason is that the Hip often sang about Canada and Canadian topics like hockey, Canadian political figures, the changing Canadian identity, and small towns that Canadians didn't know existed until the Hip sang about them. Secondly, the band was a strange embodiment of Canada. Downie is a humble and soft-spoken man, but on stage he is quirky, expressive, and passionate. Their music was the same way. It was a mix of rock and folk, nothing too flashy, but soulful with a Canadian accent.
Okay, the Hip. They're sort of like Midnight Oil. I don't know if you guys have heard Midnight Oil. They're huge in Australia. They're a cult band. Everyone knows Midnight Oil. The lead singer, Peter Garrett, he's like a huge environmentalist, a huge lobbyist for so many things. Had a stint in Parliament. That didn't go too well for him, but he did try to, to make things better, to make things right. So, yeah, the Tragically Hip, they sound a lot like Midnight Oil.
The reason that they were so loved in Canada probably stems from the fact that they weren't popular in the United States, which made them Canada's band.
Yeah.
An ongoing theme you're probably going to notice throughout this video is that sometimes Canadians look down their noses at Americans, and many Canadians definitely want to be different from Americans, and the hip is symbolic of that. It's not that Americans rejected the hip, it's that Americans don't understand them, just like they don't understand universal healthcare and gun control. It also doesn't hurt that they have some excellent songs, and all of this comes together to make the hip the ideal band for Canadians.
Yeah,
Number 8.
they're cool.
What's up with Canadian currency? The Canadian $1 coin is commonly called a loonie because there's a picture of a common loon, which is a bird on one side of it. So when the $2 bill was discontinued and a $2 coin was introduced and it featured a polar bear on it, following the same logic that a loon appears on a loonie, then a coin with a polar bear on it should be called something like a berry, right?
No.
Well, no, they decided to call it a toonie. No real reason for it, just the nickname seemed to stick. As for what is on the other side of the coin, well, it's a profile of Queen Elizabeth II's head, the face of the reigning British monarch that has appeared on Canadian coins ever since the Royal Canadian Mint started production in 1908. They do this because Canada and the British monarchy have a rather complicated relationship that we'll get to in the next entry. Another confusing aspect of Canadian currency is that there are no pennies. It was eliminated in 2013 because it cost 1.6 cents to make every 1 cent piece. Also, pennies were only used to make change because the denomination was too small to buy anything. Instead of a penny, the price of something is just rounded to the closest 5-cent denomination.
The same here in Australia as well. We call it 1 cent, and it just costs too much money to make it. So they got rid of it. They got rid of the 2 cent at the same time, and yeah, everything just gets round up to the 5 cent. Obviously this is a rather old video. All our coins still have Prince Elizabeth printed on them. I don't know if they've started printing any coins at the Australian Mint with King Charles on them. I'm not quite too sure. This coming Monday, is the first time in Queensland we are going to celebrate what is now called the King's Birthday public holiday. But yeah, I don't know if we have started, or in any time soon we will be starting to print our coins with King Charles on them, or if he's going to be on any of our bills. Currently, the Queen is on our $5 note. I think that's the only note that she's on. I don't know if King Charles will go on the $5 note. I don't know. I think they're still talking about it. They're still discussing it. In Australia at the moment, there is a big push, to do the whole referendum to become a republic. I think with Kate and William and the power couple that they are, they may, if we were to, have a referendum to become a republic, it mightn't go through. That Queen Camilla, not a fan at all.
This is only for cash transactions. If you pay with credit or debit cards, then the cents still count. Finally, yes, the money is very colourful. It's also see-through in some areas, contains braille, and is supposed to be unrippable and unmeltable. This is because the money is polymer-based and not made of cotton and paper. And yes, on their money, they have a picture of kids playing hockey, and that's found on the $5 bill.
That's
Number
cool.
7. Canada has a queen. Yes, it does, Queen Elizabeth II. However, the relationship between Canada and the Queen is quite confusing to many people, including Canadians themselves. Canada, it's an independent and sovereign country, as they were granted independence on July 1st, 1867, but it also stayed in the British Empire. Also, their parliamentary system is based on the Westminster system that was developed in the United Kingdom. The system has a British sovereign as the head of state, so Canada's parliament followed suit and put a British sovereign as the head of state.
Yes.
As the years progressed and Canada continued to take steps towards sovereignty, they simply didn't get rid of the British sovereign, even when they became a completely sovereign nation in 1982. Today, the Queen, or whoever is the reigning monarch, is a symbolic head of state, and they have no real power. Also, to remove the British monarchy as the head of state would be a lengthy and ultimately expensive legal process. So, unless something really drastic happens, Canada will probably have a British monarch for the foreseeable future. Number 6.
I loved Queen Elizabeth II. It's been a year, a couple of weeks ago, since she passed. I'm not really a fan of King Charles, and I'm not a fan of that Queen Camilla. She is not my queen. We loved and embraced everything about Queen Elizabeth II. The new ones, King Charles and Queen Camilla, like I've said, not a fan. William and Kate, mate, they are a little power couple, aren't they? They've got the family. They look, sweet and beautiful, and they're not troublemakers like Meghan and Harry. But he's gone. He's like, nah, I don't want anything to do with this family anymore. So it's pretty pear shaped what's going on there. But I do think that William and Kate can keep us under the Commonwealth, but who knows? Like the guy said, it is expensive in Australia. We did have a referendum in 1999 to become a republic, and obviously it didn't win because, like Canada, we're still under the Commonwealth. Mate, who knows? There could be another one down the track. Who knows? You just never know.
Why is milk sold in bags? Throughout Ontario and eastern Canada, the majority of milk is sold in bags. Usually there are 3.35-gallon bags sold in one bigger bag. Yes, it really is bags sold in bags in Canada, and apparently they do prefer what we're going to call bagception. Anyway, the bags are then put into milk bag holders, often
Milk
made of
bag
plastic,
holders.
and then either one or both corners of the bag are cut off. Some people think it pours better with 2 holes. The reason they use bags instead of jugs comes down to one of the major differences between the United States and Canada, which is that Canada adopted the metric system in 1970. This was a problem because Canadian products like milk needed to be sold in litres instead of gallons. However, major alterations needed to be made to the milk bottling machines in order to do litre quantities. A solution to the problem had been invented in the 1960s when DuPont discovered a way to inject milk into bags. The milk bagging machines didn't need much in the way of alterations, and by 1978 milk in bags was the most common way to buy milk in Ontario. It grew in popularity because bags are easier to ship, less fragile, and less packaging is used. All of this saves money, making it the most economical way to ship milk. Number 5.
Okay, sticking the milk bag inside the jug and then pouring it. It just doesn't make any sense. I love it, but I ask the question all the time, are you a milk bagger? I just love it. I love saying the term milk bagger. We have our milk in litre forms. We have them in cartons, like plastic cartons. You can recycle them. She's all good, mate. Okay, number 5. What's the deal with Canadian sports? All right, here we go. You've got curling. You've got hockey. You've got lacrosse. So let's see what the deal is with Canadian sports.
What's the deal with Canadian sports? In many parts of Canada, it can get very cold in the winter, and while Canadians will complain about the cold, they often embrace it and celebrate it. In fact, 2 of Canadians' favourite games are winter games that are played on ice. The first, which should be obvious, is ice hockey. According to a national poll, 53% of Canadians are fans of the NHL. Compare that to Americans and the NFL, where only 49% of Americans consider themselves a fan of the NFL. However, what is odd is that Canada doesn't have a national professional hockey league. They do have the Canadian Hockey League, which comprises of 3 junior leagues. Junior means that the players are between the ages of 16 and 21. But beyond that, they don't have a place for professionals over the age of 21 to play, like the Continental Hockey League, KHL in Eurasia, or even the United States, which has the American Hockey League, a farm system for the NHL. There is currently only one Canadian team in the AHL, and that's the Toronto Marlies. Perhaps you're thinking that this isn't that weird. Canada only has a population of 35 million people, and maybe they can't sustain a professional hockey league. Well, that may be true, but they do have their own professional football league and a basketball league. The Canadian Football League has 9 teams and they play a 20-week schedule. Its rules are similar to the rules of the NFL, except the balls are bigger and the goal lines are 110 yards apart and the end zones are 20 yards and they have 1 less down. As for the Canadian Basketball League, it was started in 2011 and has 10 teams. The second winter sport the Canadians love is a game more boring to watch than golf, and this is curling.
More boring to watch than golf. You are so wrong, mate. I do not think there could be a game in the world that is more boring to watch than golf. So you are dead set wrong, mate. I'm sorry. Curling, it looks cool. Golf, it's not. It's not cool at all. It's as boring as it's just crazy. Basketball. Here's a fact for you guys. Canada invented basketball. They invented the concept of basketball, a thing that I learnt watching Made in Canada, and I think I've also seen a Heritage Minutes episode about it. So, yeah. Your Canadian football. I didn't understand a single word he said about that. It's similar to gridiron. I don't really watch gridiron. I might start following Canadian Football League because it looked like Winnipeg had a team, and you guys know that I follow the Winnipeg Jets. That's the team that I chose. So I might even look at learning about Canadian football and checking out the Winnipeg team. Because if you're going to go for Winnipeg in the hockey, well, you have to go for Winnipeg in the football, right? That's just how it goes.
There are 1 million people in the world that curl, and 90% of them are in Canada. And in case you're wondering, yes, in Canada, some curlers are celebrities. Number 4, why does Canada have different flavored chips? Yes, some Canadian brands of chips have flavors based on Canadian food like poutine and maple syrup, but they also have 2 flavors that are made by Frito-Lay that aren't Canadian in nature, but are rarely found outside of Canada. These are ketchup and all dressed.
Yes,
ketchup
I've tried
is pretty
them both.
self-explanatory, except that they don't really have an overwhelming ketchup taste. They are sweet, but also very salty. The reason that ketchup chips are popular in Canada but aren't found elsewhere is because for decades the best-selling brand of chips in Canada was the Canadian-based Hostess potato chips, and one of their most popular flavors was ketchup. In the 1980s, Hostess teamed up with Frito-Lay, and eventually the Hostess brand lost its value, and their chips, which included ketchup chips, were rebranded as Lay's. The second kind, which was sold for a short time in the United States in 2015 and can still be found in stores now and then, is all dressed. It's a combination of paprika, tomato, salt, vinegar, onion, sour cream, ketchup, and barbecue, which gives it a sweet and salty taste that is hard to explain. Nevertheless, it is quite popular in Canada. According to Ruffles' website, all dressed is the #1 flavor of chip in Canada.
Okay, I've tried Ruffles All Dressed, and oh my gosh, it is a strange taste. You just can't describe what it tastes like. I don't find it weird at all that you have heaps of different flavored chips. In Australia, you go into a Woolworths, man, you have chicken, you have barbecue, you have sour cream and onion, you have sour cream and chives, you have Korean flavored chips, ketchup flavored chips, tomato, barbecue. The list just keeps on going. Chicken, soy, like, it's incredible. In Australia, we have so many different brands of chips. Your Lay's, it looks very similar. The packaging, the writing, it looks very similar to a brand of chips we have in Australia called Smith's Chips.
Fortunately, we couldn't find out why All Dressed is only available in Canada. However, based on speculation alone, it could be because All Dressed has ketchup seasoning, and as we just mentioned, ketchup chips are usually only found in Canada. Number 3, why do they always say sorry? Besides A, another word that Canadians use a lot is sorry. However, that can often be followed up with an A, just like, hey, sorry. It's a versatile word to Canadians. In the book, How to Be a Canadian, even if you already are one, there is a whole chapter on mastering the word. They identify 12 different ways it can be used. Simple, essential, occupational, subservient, aristocratic, demonstrative, libidinous, ostentatious, mythical, unrepentant, sympathetic, and authentic.
Okay, I don't even know what half those words mean. The British men, they're always just so smart and stuff, aren't they? I don't know what you're talking about, mate. I have no idea. I fair income have no idea. You use A like we use mate, and you say sorry all the time. You say sorry like we say, it's all good, mate. It's all good. So, yeah. Stop being such a fancy pommy with all those words, mate. It doesn't make any sense.
One reason that Canadians apologize is that it's part of their culture of politeness, but it's also a quick way to smooth over problems and keep relationships positive. Another theory is that Canadians do it as a way to show that they aren't Americans. As Joseph Breen of the National Post wrote, sorry is a totem of niceness with a sly undertone of superiority. It announces both our presence and the fact that we feel slightly bad about it. It also subtly asserts that cultural appearances notwithstanding, we are not American.
What he means by that is, I'm going to pause it. I think in America, if you say you're sorry, that is an admission of guilt and you're cactus, mate. You're in trouble. I think there is a law in Canada that protects you. If you say you're sorry, it cannot be used as an admission of guilt. You say it in America, they will throw the book at you. They'll lock you in prison, mate. So don't say it there.
He also says that it's rather different from the empty sorry that British people will say, which is where Canada inherited much of its language, and it is also much different than the American John Wayne style of forgiveness, where that is associated with weakness. Number 2, what's the deal with poutine? To many non-Canadians or people who've never tried it, poutine can look pretty unappetizing. When Jay Pritchard saw it on Modern Family, he said,
well, it looks like vomit, so I'm not poutine it in my mouth.
Fair enough, after all, it's gravy made from animal fat or even better mushroom and root broth that is mixed with flour and then poured over fries with cheese curd sprinkled on it. So yes, it's crispy fries with liquid poured on it, which sounds like a pretty soggy mess. However, if Canadians even see a picture of poutine, some of them will start to drool like Homer Simpson. Poutine is available at many fast food restaurants in Canada, like McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King and Harvey's, which is a Canadian fast food chain. Even Costco serves it in their food court. Of course, you wouldn't be surprised to learn that there is a chain of restaurants that serves exclusively poutine. Oddly enough, though, you can't get poutine at Tim Hortons. The origin of poutine is debated, but the adding of cheese curds to fries and gravy is often credited to Bernard Lachance of Café Ideal in Warwick, Quebec. In 1957, regular customer Eddie Lannes asked for the cheese curds to be added to fries, and Lachance said, and I apologize to all the French people watching, but ça va te faire un maudit poutine? And in English that means that will make a damned mess.
Okay.
From there, the popularity of the dish grew, and it has become the most famous Canadian food.
Absolutely.
As for why it's so popular, well, that's apparently because it's delicious. Number 1.
It's popular because it's a comfort carb meal. And everyone loves a comfort carb meal. Mate, I love it. When winter comes around, oh my gosh, don't you just get into the carby snacks? You do. You have the carby snacks, you have the carby dinners. It's warm, it's comfortable, you eat it in your pajamas. Mate, I can see myself living in Canada during winter, walking into a shop that sells poutine in my pajamas with my flip-flops on saying, can I get a family poutine to go, mate? That's just, it's comfort food. Everybody loves comfort food. Okay, let's see the number one reason. Things about Canada that the rest of the world finds weird. Let's go.
1. Why are Canadians so polite?
It's a culture
One
thing, and it's
stereotype
cool.
you always hear is that Canadians are nice and polite. However, if you were to ask Canadians if this is true, they would deny it or say that the stereotype is overblown, and then they'd probably apologize for potentially seeming curt. So, is it true? And if so, why are they so polite? An article by Cassandra Solarsky of the Canadian Press tried to answer the question, but the problem is that measuring niceness across a country is really hard to do. In one attempt, researchers compared the language used on Twitter by Canadians and Americans.
Oh, that's
they found that the
interesting.
words used by Canadians were gentler, nicer, and generally more positive.
Okay.
On the other hand, as we mentioned, Canadians tend to think of themselves as superior to Americans. They may not say it flat out, especially if there are Americans around, but behind closed doors, Canadians can stereotype Americans as ignorant, gun-toting, warmongering religious zealots who drink weak beer. They even have a popular country song about the beer part. For example, on a segment on a satirical news show on the government-subsidized CBC, comedian Rick Mercer would interview Americans and ask them about untrue and ridiculous things about Canada. For example, he would ask Americans to record a congratulatory message to Canada on building a dome over the national igloo. He even got the then governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, to say it. He also got George W. Bush, who was running for president, to thank Prime Minister Jean Poutine for his support. The segments were so popular that it was made into a 1-hour special. Isn't that nice? So,
mate, it is true, but Americans, they don't know a lot about outside of America. And that's a cultural thing. I mean, that's just how they are. When it comes to stereotypes, mate, we give it to everyone from New Zealand. We call them the Kiwis. And do we give it to people from England, from Great Britain? We call them Poms. We call them whinging Poms. Oh my God. And the rivalry that we have between both New Zealand and Great Britain in sports, it's absolutely insane. Against England, we have the Ashes in the cricket, and mate, it's on. When we're playing against the Ashes and we lose, oh, we are whingers. When they lose, mate, it's the end of the world. It's the absolute end of the world. So, yeah, he is true. Americans, they don't know much about outside of America, but, mate, that's all good. That's who they are. That's what they do. It's all good, mate.
while it is debatable if Canadians are nice or not, what is even less clear is why the stereotype exists. Our guess is something called the fragment theory, which is when a colonial country keeps some old world sensibilities. This makes Canadians conservative and deferential, which could be construed as polite. A second theory is that the foundation of Canada was English, French, and the Aboriginal people who coexisted with each other using tolerance and politeness, and those traditions have carried on into modern Canadian society. Finally, it could just be because Canada is a really vast place, and and the elements can be pretty harsh. Let's say someone's car breaks down on some rural road in northern Ontario where cell phone service is spotty at best on a cold winter's night. The person has to hope that the next car coming along is going to help, or things are going to get really bleak. So perhaps Canadians are nicer because the elements of their country make them more dependent on their fellow Canadian, so being tolerant and polite to others was, as is, a matter of survival to Canadians, because you never know who the next person
Same
coming
as
down
Australia,
the road
mate.
is.
Alright, there you go. Things about Canada that the rest of the world finds weird. I knew a lot of these things from this video already. I don't find them weird. The milk bagging thing, I'm never gonna understand why you buy milk in a bag and then you put it in a jug to pour it. That's never gonna make any sense to me, but I think it's cool. Maybe I'm jealous that we can't do it here in Australia. Maybe I'm like, why hasn't somebody sent me a milk bag yet? I've got a little snip thing. She'll all be good, mate. That was a really cool video, guys. I really enjoyed it. Share your comments. What do you think? Do you think a lot of these things are weird? Or do you just think that's who you are? It's a cultural thing. That was the video for today, guys. If you liked it, please jump on, smash the like button, leave a comment, and of course, remember to subscribe. That really helps me out. Cheers to Down Under. Take care. Bye.